special and fortunate here, and thank you for being here this morning. Also, thank you for riding our bus service. I want to say that just as well. I am Sam DeSue. I'm TriMet's general manager. I've been at the organization for 6 years. So I'll introduce our board chair to my right here, and then maybe staff.
Good morning and thank you. I'm Laverne Lewis and I'm board president. I'm going on my second term and I love riding Max.
If we could just have the executive team stand up for just a quick moment, and for you just to quickly introduce yourselves.
Nancy Young Oliver, Chief Financial Officer.
Claire Corey, the new Chief of Strategy and Planning.
Okay. And can the board stand and introduce yourselves and your districts?
We'd like to start by acknowledging the district's receipt of the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for its fiscal year 2024-2025 adopted budget book. We always love a clear and easy to read budget document that helps us, it helps staff and the community as a whole. We'll start with any introductory remarks you might have, General Manager DeSue, and then we'll hear public comment, and then we'll ask our questions and discuss the budget with you.
Thank you. We'll start with our board chair, and then we'll move from there.
Thank you and good morning. And thank you, Chair Quiros and the commissioners for being here this morning. I do have some brief remarks about TriMet's approved budget for fiscal year 2026. The 2026 budget outlines TriMet's resources and requirements planned for July 1st, 2025 through June of next year, 2026. During this time, TriMet will provide essential transit services to communities within our Tri-County service area as we continue to build our ridership. The 2026 budget holds the line with no increases beyond that is necessary to meet the essential contractual obligations, such as the rising electrical costs and other inflationary pressures. Significant budgetary expenditures for the 26 year includes continued fixed routes and paratransit services, state of good repair, and our capital programs. Under this budget, we continue to invest in operations and maintenance personnel, our committed level of safety and security on the system, and maintaining the current levels of service with modest increase in the fall and next spring. We also continue to work with our regional partners for a better bus service, what we call TriMet FX Frequent Express, to historically disadvantaged high crash corridors, and continue efforts to help riders living on low-income access transit. I'll turn it over to the General Manager, Sam DeSue, now for some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Again, thank you, President Lewis, Board Chair Quiros, and Commissioners. Thank you all for being here. TriMet's budget for fiscal year 2026 reflects on our continued commitment to providing reliable, safe, and accessible public transit to our community while navigating the ongoing financial challenges that have affected and continue to affect transit agencies nationwide. So our fiscal year 2026 budget outlines a $1.94 billion in spending and fund balance. It includes $900 million for daily operations, $221 million for capital investments, and about $101 million in pass-through and contingency funds. The budget also includes $722 million in in-fund balance totals, which are unappropriated and unavailable for spending in FY26. The approved budget reflects key priorities, including mission-critical staffing needs, ensuring that we have the personnel required to maintain operations at a high standard, service level requirements, maintaining and enhancing the services that riders rely on, and then system and facility maintenance, addressing the upkeep of our facilities and infrastructure. We have a state of good repair investments, committing resources to maintain and improve our assets to extend their useful life, and capital project planning and construction, preparing for our future needs of the region to ensure continued growth and efficiency of our transit network. Like many other public transit agencies across the nation, TriMet is facing financial challenges that began with the COVID-19 pandemic. While our ridership has increased from dramatic lows during the early months of the pandemic, it has also been impacted by a variety of community-wide challenges, which have affected livability in our region. In the face of these challenges, we've made considerable investments to improve safety and security for our riders and our employees. In fact, today we have more safety and security personnel on our transit system than ever before, with nearly 500 people providing presence and support on our system. Over the past 3 years, calls for police services on the system have decreased by more than 40%, demonstrating the positive impact of these investments. TriMet ridership is on the rise, thanks in part to investments in security, efforts to improve the customer experience, and really adjustments made to our bus service through our Forward Together service plan. Those changes have helped to bring bus services closer to the people who really rely on it. These initiatives, along with a partial return to work, in-person work, and events, have increased ridership. However, we are still seeing ridership levels that are about 30% below pre-pandemic levels, and also that means that fare revenue remains lower, which has been a significant challenge for TriMet and many other transit agencies across the United States. The one-time federal pandemic relief funds, which provided a lifeline for public transit agencies across the country, TriMet as well, have been depleted now in place. As we move forward, we're working to identify efficiencies and efforts to adapt, to prioritize, and to move forward responsibly. We are also engaging lawmakers to increase state funding. I've spent the last couple of weeks down in Salem, also to help avoid the physical cliff that is ahead of us. We thank you for your continued support, and we really look forward to working together to ensure that TriMet remains a vital part of the Portland's future. With that, I'll turn to our Chief Financial Officer, Nancy Young-Oliver, for additional details before we get to the questions. So thank you for your time this morning.
Great, thank you, Sam, and good morning, Commissioners. We are very pleased to present the approved budget for your review and comment today. I wanted to just point out a couple items within our document, specifically that we have maintained TriMet's strategic financial plan policy, and that includes our 2.5 months operating reserves, a minimum of 3% contingency. Our OPEB and pension plans are being funded through a combination of PAYGO as well as funding from the trust. Our debt limitation, if we issue bonds in this next year, will be at 5.9%, which is well below our 7.5% debt cap. We've also included $50 million of general funds towards our capital program. The rest of the capital program is funded through external resources. We are pleased to have received the GFOA's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award, and this is the 5th year in a row. What you may not know is we received exceptional marks in both capital and long-term planning, so that was a first for us this year. If you had received a hard copy of the budget document, you would have noticed that it's a little bit thicker and weighs a little bit more. The reason for that is that while we have a ways to go, we are working on bringing our budget document to be ADA compliant. This is a federal compliance requirement that is due by April of 2027. Now, because it is a federal compliance requirement, that date is subject to change, but we are really excited about the efforts that we've put towards this endeavor at this time. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the budget document, but I know that you have a list of questions for us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the introductory remarks. I'll now call on any members of the public that would like to speak. Each person is limited to 3 minutes of public comment, and we'll let you know when you're nearing the end of your time. Allegra, do we have any members of the public signed up to testify?
No, we do not, and we have no advance written comment that has been given. If anyone who is here and has not had a chance to sign up and would like to give comment, please just indicate that now so that we can bring you up. Seeing none, I would say if we do receive any written public comment for today's hearing, we'll post it on our website as part of the public meeting record, but I don't see any that we need to address right now.
Okay, we'll go ahead and dive into our questions, and I have the first one. Our first question is for the board. A challenge for any aging transit agency is balancing investments and ongoing maintenance of existing infrastructure with new projects, new objectives. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you've balanced these two important areas of TriMet's work when making budget decisions? And do you foresee one area or the other needing increased focus in the coming years?
Thank you for the question. That's a challenging question for us. I see them nodding heads over there, but thank you. As the TriMet Board of Directors, we are dedicated to working with the agency to ensure responsible fiscal activities. TriMet prides itself on being the innovator in the industry and providing a service that is reliable, that is safe, and that's easy to use. If you have our hot pass, you know that. Okay. As the board, we are supporting budget actions that are geared towards continued state of good repair projects and ensuring new projects are driven by regional mobility needs. TriMet has been in operations since 1969 and has grown its service to include light rail, which we have today, commuter rail, and the BRT over the decade to the betterment of our region as a whole. Many of our assets are aging. Some have become obsolete and are in need of maintenance and replacement. The agency's leadership is committed to the safety and maintenance of the existing infrastructure and the ability to deliver continued reliable service for the years to come. The GM has some additional comments to that question also.
I'll say that as we move into FY 2026, maintaining what we have is critical and key with some expansion. So we are allocating funds to state of good repair. You all know that we have one of our lines that at its end of life, so we're doing replacement so that we can maintain that line for the next 50 years in the region. State of good repair is a top priority for the organization. We can't operate a broken system. It's critical for us to maintain our system and provide service reliability and really address that state of good repair that's out there. On the expansion side, we're very excited about, from a New Horizon standpoint, is the 82nd Avenue project that we're working on now, and also the TV Highway project that we're doing work. And then in the distance is the Interstate Bridge project that we're working on. All of those with full funding agreements yet to be worked out. We're still working through that and really keeping a balance of efficiencies coupled with the expansion is critical as the agency's success moving people with that. As the system ages, TriMet wants to work with our board to make sure that we remain diligent about the replacement and the rehabilitation of our current system as we continue to keep an eye on expansion as we move forward.
Good morning again.
The final red line extension was finished last year. Congratulations on wrapping up the Better Red project. Did this multi-year project go as planned, and did you stay on time and under budget?
Good morning. Again, Sean Batty, I'm the Interim Executive Director of Engineering Construction. Thanks for the opportunity to address this question to the Commission. In a word, yes, the Better Red multi-year project did go as planned and is now providing red line service to the Hillsborough Airport Fairgrounds Station and is also providing service schedule reliability for the overall MAX system. The project managed to do this without a single unplanned disruption. We had many, many planned disruptions, as you'd expect with a project of this magnitude, but not one that was unplanned, which is a notable achievement. We had absolutely exceptional safety results from our contractors, and we managed to do this utilizing a broad range of smaller firms, including several firms that are new to TriMet contracting. So yes, the Red Line project was delivered on time and under budget, despite, if everybody recalls the time period, significant impacts from COVID and including supply chain disruptions. And this also included restoring some value engineered scope that was taken out of the project because of FTA's required contingency levels, which included restoring some security fencing to a little bit better performing and better looking security type fencing, and then also restoring the second shelter at the Gateway North platform.
Thank you. I have a follow-up, and congrats again on a successful project.
Thank you.
The new line was mentioned in the opening remarks, so we've been hearing about the potential expansion of the FX program with this new line planned for 82nd. What is the timeline for that project, and how is it being funded?
Outstanding. Yes, you are hearing correctly. We are very excited to continue moving the 82nd Transit Improvement Project forward with our local, metro, and federal partners. The project is now in the FTA's capital investment grant process with formal permission to enter the project development phase in place as of this spring. We expect 30% design to be completed in June, and then final design to be completed in the spring of 2027, with construction starting again in the spring of 2027, and completion of construction and the start of revenue service in the fall of 2029.
When we look at funding this project, approximately 80% of the project will be funded through external federal resources, leaving a 20% funding from TriMet. That 20% funding would come through the issuance of bond funds pending board approval, and that will bring us to the full project.
It's, I've been enjoying the FX line on Division, but it wasn't without its hiccups initially. And I'm curious what was the impetus to move to move this project, this type of project, to the 82nd corridor? We knew that coming, down Division in from East County made sense. Can you talk to us a little bit about what's driving the need on 82nd?
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, the current line on 82nd Avenue is our highest ridership line. It's also the line that experiences the greatest amount of delays to bus service. So when you think about the improvements we made on FX on Division, transit signal priority, and not to mention just the condition of 82nd with the recent jurisdictional transfer, it's definitely an emerging neighborhood, an area that needs investment. So with those three factors, high ridership, a lot of delay, and then also an opportunity to provide a transformative investment, it just seemed like a no-brainer.
Thank you.
Continuing on about capital projects, years past, TSCC and TriMet has had discussions about the budgeting for capital projects and the completion rate of those budgeted projects every year. And last year, we talked about strategies to improve the completion rates, including a budget limit of $250 million on the annual capital budget. So we're back, and we'd like to hear an update to let us know how it's going and have things been improving this year in that regard.
Great, thank you for the question. So from a purely financial standpoint, the agency is falling short of our expectations. We adopted the fiscal year 2025 budget with slightly under $200 million for our capital project, which is approximately $130 million less than what we've done in previous years. Through the first 9 months of fiscal year 2025, Projects managers has spent approximately 40% of the total budget. If we double our output in these last 3 months, at best, we would hit an 80% utilization for the year. So we still have some work to do. When we look at the fiscal '26 budget, as Sam mentioned earlier, the approved budget has $221 million for projects for the fiscal year. However, after some modifications, specifically to our light rail vehicle replacement program, we will be adopting a budget at $165 million for the capital program. Sean's now going to talk about some of those projects and the reasons for delays.
Yeah, just to step back a little bit, Matt, the terminology we use internally for this is capital utilization, which is really about utilizing capital on the schedule that we plan to use it. So working through projects more quickly is often kind of a mitigation to finding that we've fallen behind, most often due to issues beyond our span of control. But the completion rate itself isn't, strictly speaking, the metric. It's planning projects better, so we're using capital as we need it. That said, as Nancy indicated, we haven't improved in the single year to the degree we've hoped. In some part, that's still because many of our projects are large multi-year projects, so we're still working on projects that were baseline in past years. And I'm going to speak to several of that ilk. We do expect to see more improvement as a higher proportion of our projects are new projects that have been baseline using some of our more enhanced PD techniques, and also incorporating lessons learned from past projects, which is a robust part of our continuous improvement culture. Every project delay has a story, but there's 4 projects I want to focus on because they have kind of an outsized impact on the capital utilization percentage. Just to note, capital projects, my division, we don't, or engineering construction, we don't manage every project in the capital improvement program, but this is a good snapshot and it's kind of representative. The 4 projects I'm going to speak to are the Type 6 replacement. So this is the replacement of our Type 1 vehicles. This is our first ever fleet replacement where we're replacing light rail vehicles specifically for state of good repair reasons. The Red Line project, and the reason I'm going to speak to the Red Line is because the Red Line budget carried budget for 4 new Type 6 vehicles for its service. And then I'm going to speak to 2 CCTV projects. Our vehicle CCTV project, which is for the Type 3 and Type 4 LRV CCTV system upgrades. And then finally, our West CCTV project. And the reason I'm going to focus on those because if you take just the projects that are managed by engineering construction plus that are budgeted in our division, if you include those projects, we're at about 80% capital utilization. So an improvement over last year, but not where we wanted. But if you exclude those 4 projects, we're at nearly 90% capital utilization. So the stories of these 2 projects, I think, are instructive to the kinds of things that occur on projects where we make management decisions that do trade off capital utilization for other management choices. So again, as I said, the Type 6 project is replacing the 26 Type 1 LRVs that are well beyond their end of useful life. And that project is, I believe, over 7 years old from inception. And so it was hot and heavy in the middle of the pandemic. And it did experience several reasonable force majeure claims due to the pandemic. So those are claims where we agreed that the contractor was impacted for a force majeure reason. We agreed to a delay. Last year, when we budgeted for the project in the current year, we were still following the project's, the vendor's payment schedule, which is based on a series of milestones, completion milestones. And as we got into the beginning of the year, we have a new public information system that was being integrated into our existing system, our existing GPS technology, and being rolled out on this new project. And it wasn't keeping pace with where we had hoped it would be. We did have a choice to put those vehicles into service. It would have been completely safe, would have been useful for our customers, but the implication would have been that occasionally our operators would have gotten a nuisance fault. So that's a fault that would have occurred on their panel that said, hey, the GPS signal has been lost. And we want our operators to take faults like that seriously. We want our maintainers to take that seriously. And we could have put those vehicles into service with those faults in place, but we decided not to. We decided to wait, allow the vendor time to correct those faults. So we weren't rolling out a vehicle that had our operators and our maintainers reacting to something that was essentially a false positive, but instead took the time to correct that and roll those vehicles out. So that 4 to 5 month impact represents a significant amount of impact of capital utilization. And it was a management choice just to promote our safety culture, to make sure our operators and our maintainers had the equipment that they expected that was in line with our SOPs and weren't having to react to a minor nuisance on the system. But that project, because each light rail vehicle is more than $5 million, when you delay payments in 4 months, it has a very outsized impact on capital utilization. The other projects that I wanted to talk about are the vehicle CCTVs. So obviously CCTV is a backbone of our safety and security systems, and they are prone to becoming obsolescent. It's electronic stuff. And so this is an upgrade to put in state-of-the-art equipment on those vehicles. It's really, really important that we have as standard of equipment across all our fleets as possible. We have a consistent back end for video capture, and we need all of those to integrate in the same way. And we're also including new functionality, which includes live video push-in, where we can actually look on the train in real time through a video camera. And so this is a complicated project, and we, with a lot of good research in the market, and really working with vendors and trying to understand where the market was going, which was definitely 5 and 6 years ago going in an area called software as a service, where people were developing, yes, hardware, electronic hardware, different kinds of computer equipment, but really the business model was to sell you that hardware, but then to sell the software that powered it as a service. And we moved forward based on an idea for procurement that was valid at that time, and also in recognition that almost all, minus our Type 1 vehicles, are Siemens vehicles. And so we moved into in a direction where we were procuring with all that in mind. As we got into negotiations with the vendors, it became very protracted, and we were working through almost line by line with the specifications, many, many months of negotiation. And what we learned and came to believe is that the idea of software as a service, at least for those vendors, has kind of became even more important, and they were very, very interested in ensuring that we were purchasing a certain amount of software in addition to the hardware. And at that point, we weren't as enamored of the software component. We were really interested in the hardware component and what it could do. And at the same time, in spite of months of negotiation, we still weren't at the place where we had price certainty and certainty they could meet some of our critical specs, like numbers of cameras, the frame rate for that live video push-in. So really important things. Again, we made a management decision. We could have moved forward with those uncertainties, potentially maintained our capital utilization rate, but it didn't feel like the right decision for the agency. So we did take the hit on capital utilization and schedule and moved in a different direction, re-baseline that project, and now are going out for a different procurement methodology, which we hope to execute starting this fiscal year and complete in the next 2 years to upgrade that. So that's an example of a couple projects, again, that are very large dollar value projects where key management decisions do affect our capital utilization rate. We always keep capital utilization in mind, but we also have to balance that with the implications to the project itself when we're faced with a delay like the kinds I described. We do absolutely continue to look forward to using our enhancing our PD opportunities as we develop new projects, building in those lessons learned, building in more float to our schedules, learning where our span of control really is so that we have more, frankly, pessimistic schedules at the outset. The final thing I wanted to note is we took your comments last year to heart. We take this issue to heart. And while it wasn't exhaustive, we did commission a consultant report to look at some other agencies in hopes that we'd find another agency that was comparable to us in terms of capital, that was frankly doing better with capital utilization, that we could maybe model and learn from. And interestingly, and again, it was not exhaustive, the 4 entities that we surveyed, none of them were really doing much better than we are at this point. And I'm not sure if that's a post-pandemic thing or if it's just a feature of the challenge with managing capital projects of this scale in concert with generally accepted accounting principles. But I certainly, offline, would welcome any insights this body has with respect to the entities it has purview over that we could learn from in that respect. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yep, thank you. And I think probably speak to all of us that we certainly want the projects to be done right rather than, having a capitalization utilization rate wag the dogs, so to speak. That being said, so do you have what's the target for next year, I guess? And is that the right metric that you would like us to focus on?
Yeah, the target that Nancy, would you like to answer that? Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. So, as I said earlier, for fiscal year 2026, in the approved budget, we have $221 million towards a number of projects. However, because of the light rail vehicle, the cash flow and the timing of when those vehicles will come in and replace the type 1s and some type 2s, we've dropped that down. So the capital program next year will be approximately $165 million. So this is a significant decrease from what we've done in the past. However, even within that $165 million, effort is going forward on the light rail vehicles, as well as 82nd, and a number of state of good repair projects.
Thanks. And I'm a bond guy, so I have bond-related questions. And are these capital projects funded mostly by tax-exempt bonds, or is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a combination. When you look at our entire capital portfolio right now, again, currently, let's use the approved budget because that's what you've reviewed. Of the $221 million, only $50 million is our general fund dollars. The rest of the funding for the capital program comes through federal grants and local partnerships. So when we're doing 82nd Street, there's a number of our local partners that are supporting that project, including the City of Portland, Metro, and some others. So it's a real community effort to bring one of these big projects to completion.
Great, and I guess you probably know this, but maybe but the tax-exempt bonds, they do come with a spend-down requirement of 85% over 3 years, and so it just makes me worry if things are delayed, that might be a risk to the.
Yeah, you are correct, and currently, right now, TriMet is in a position where we will be paying arbitrage because they have not been spent down to that 85% mark, so you're very familiar with that. And previously, our strategic financial plan stated that when we go out for bonds, we're going to go out for the maximum amount that we can up to the debt limit. We are repurposing and relooking at that particular requirement and have some edits that we will be proposing to our board for adoption in a later board meeting. But what we're looking at now is paying attention more to each project and the cash flow needs of that particular project, and making sure that some of those guardrails that we've put in are, they have to be able to spend $10 million within a two-year period of time, which means that some projects that maybe yesterday you would have looked for bond funding for, we will not be bonding for those types of projects. Now, as you know, bonding is really for the new shiny object. It's not for, yesterday's asset, the state of good repair. That has to come out of our operating costs. So as we look at that with a more focused attention on the cash flow for those projects, we anticipate we'll be seeking authorization from our board to go out for $150 million, which would take us up to 5.9% of the total 7.5% debt ceiling that we're authorized to have. So focusing again more on the cash flows and making sure that the cash is available when is needed for a specified project versus just going out and taking as much as we can and then trying to figure out where can we use those bonds.
Great, thank you.
Oops. I'll start that again. Let me introduce myself. First of all, apologies for being late. Clearly, I should have taken TriMet. My name is Rita Moore. This is my first year on TSCC.
Welcome.
Thank you. We know many federal funding sources are unpredictable right now. Does TriMet expect to see any changes to federal funding? And what impacts might the general public see if federal funding to TriMet is reduced?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very popular question right now that everybody wants an answer to. TriMet receives two flavors of federal funding. The first flavor is our federal formula funding. We receive the federal formula funding just purely because we exist. We have boardings, we have operating costs, we have passenger revenue miles, and all of that data goes into a formula and it kicks out at the other end a set amount. It's about $95 million altogether for TriMet. While we don't anticipate that color of money to change, we are concerned about delays in when we would receive that funding. The second color of federal funding that we receive is discretionary funding. That's where we apply for, through a grant request for funding. It's competitive in nature, meaning that other transit properties are competing against us, and so whoever makes the best argument might get the win. Sometimes we win and sometimes we don't. It is in this area, the discretionary funding, that TriMet is concerned that may be reduced or eliminated altogether. That discretionary funding is very important in that our formula funding is used for preventive maintenance and the purchase of vehicles. Those discretionary grants or those competitive grants are used for those big projects such as 82nd Street, TV Highway, Columbia Bus Base, PMLR, those types of projects. So if that funding falls short, what that means is that we'll have a stay in expansion and further projects, such as 82nd and TV Highway that we have on our plate right now. TriMet continues right now to receive monthly reimbursements from the FTA, the federal funding. We have also received some obligations of that federal funding. So when you receive the award, but it has to be obligated by the federal government, we have continued to receive some new obligations, which means that as soon as we have an eligible expenditure, we can draw those funds down. We are watching closely the announcements from the federal government as to whether or not they're going to pause, reprioritize, or cancel altogether those federal grant awards. So the impact to the general public, what that means is that our expansion might be slowed down or eliminated for a period of time. If, for some reason, the federal formula funding would be permanently reduced or removed, as I said earlier, that's about $95 million to TriMet on an annual basis. So we would be looking for other external resources. We would look at if there's a new revenue stream. We will look at our passenger fares. And we will also be in a position where we would have to look at the cuts to our service that we would have to implement in order to ensure that we have a balanced budget.
Can I ask a follow-up? So we see in your budget that you've set aside contingency funds to accommodate fluctuations in federal funding. If I'm reading this correctly, it's only about 1/3 of the amount that you expect to get from the feds. How did you arrive at that number? Do you think it's adequate, especially given everything? And do you have any contingency plans for the contingency funds?
Contingency to the contingency, I like that. Thank you for the questions. There's a lot of unknowns as we were all in agreement on with the federal funding and the timing of those funds coming in the door. Just as a fail-safe, while our policy requires a minimum of 3% of our operations for contingency, we added an additional $50 million to that. That represents about half of our formula funding that we would receive in a given year. We did that just as a fail-safe that should there be delays that are extended, we need to be able to keep things moving, right? So we need to keep the 82nd Street project moving. We need to continue with our preventive maintenance in our state of good repair. We need to continue with some of those vehicles, such as the lift vehicles that we're purchasing. So the formula or the logic behind it is, let's add 50%. Those funds are coming from the reserves that we have set aside during the pandemic to help us stay off a fiscal cliff. Our intent at the end of the year is that we don't touch a contingency at all. That's our best laid plan, but it is there should we need to call on it. And of course, as you know, any use of contingency would require a board approval.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Sean, I'm with you. Thank you for mentioning the sort of the survey of spend down on capital programs. I think it's pretty, I've worked for a couple of utilities and we have the same challenges. Sometimes I think it's almost an artifact of annual budgeting. It's really hard to put those dollars in the right place, but thanks for your response on that. So another question on funding, more focused now on operations, and Sam, you alluded to I think your term was the fiscal cliff. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you did say that. that you see in your forecast with your fund balance decreasing as you spend down reserves to cover operating expenses. With that clear gap in the horizon, we'd like to hear a little bit more about your plan to address those shortfalls. You mentioned working in Salem and probably the payroll tax. But can you expand a little bit on what you've been working on, or I'm not sure the question's directed to. Okay, great.
Great. Now, this is a great question, and you know, on one hand, yes, TriMet has a fiscal cliff that we're facing that would hit, you know, if everything remains the same, nothing changes, would hit us in 2031. We feel very fortunate in that we, you know, worked our forecast and we saw the pending fiscal cliff coming. So when the pandemic hit and we were receiving the federal stimulus fundings, we purposed to set funds aside in a reserve and not reappropriate those funds. As you've seen, our fund balance has grown over the last, 4 years, increasing it well beyond the 2.5 months operating reserves. That was intentional so that we could stay off any fiscal cliff as long as we can. If as you go through and you look at the budget, you'll see that we do have a deficit this year. It's around $70 million. And the reason why we're not taking significant cuts this year is because of those reserves that we've set aside. And we are very pleased that we have a 5-year runway before we are looking at a true fiscal cliff where drastic cuts would need to be made. 5 years, we feel, is, on one hand, it's great, we've got 5 years, but we don't know if it's going to be enough. So we're taking actions now to put ourselves in a position where our revenues either meet or exceed our expenditures. We have done a number of education sessions with our board members to bring their attention to the structural imbalance between our resources and requirements. We are looking at several efforts currently, right now, down in the legislature for Sam and our team, is we're looking at the STIF funding, the State Transportation Improvement Fund employee payroll tax. Right now, it's 0.1%, and we're seeking an increase in that payroll tax. As you can imagine, there are some folks that are in agreement and some folks that are not. But that is a very important piece that we're looking at. It's right now and it's right in front of us. Additional legislation in front of or facing us right now is the transfer of the West commuter rail line to a new transit authority. And TriMet does back that concept, but there's a lot that has to happen. It's not just a simple, here's the keys and there you go. We have there's a federal interest in the West, and there are local contributions, and there's a lot of parties. It's not just, turn over the keys, but we are working with the legislature to provide the information needed and the considerations to be had. Their look there is to take the West Line, not just, down to Wilsonville, but take it all the way to Salem and then eventually to Eugene, and we would support that effort. The West Line is a significant expense to TriMet. It's one that's been under consideration as we've had internal discussions. And then finally, it goes without saying, but we were reviewing our revenues that come in the door, all of our resources, working together to identify if there's a possibility for a new revenue stream. We will also look at our fares, and as you know, we increased our fares for the first time in 10 years, about a year ago. We're also looking at our expenses and looking at where will we need to take cuts. But if nothing happens and everything stays as it is, there's no new revenue streams, we would have to start looking at taking service cuts as early as fiscal year 2027.
So you mentioned WES as something that you might want to reduce TriMet's exposure for operations. Can you give us any other examples of what you might be looking at for efficiencies now that instead of waiting until the moment where you really have to make some serious decisions?
Yeah, so this year specifically within 2026, so you'll see this change between the approved and the adopted, is that throughout our divisions, we've taken between a 2 to 3% cut in expenditures. A lot of this has to do with discretionary spending, so we will not be sending as many people to external training, maybe focusing more on a WebEx training, where you can avoid all the travel expenses. So looking at our expenditures, and maybe there's a few positions that are currently vacant that will not be filled in this next year is another lever that we have. But in addition to that, I really want to give call out to a couple of our teams internally where they have just identified efficiencies and, in a sense, increased our revenues. So within our LIFT program, they have implemented, and I forget the name of it right now, but, a shopping where a rider on the LIFT system is taking 2, 3, 4 trips, on a regular basis to get their groceries, and they're limited on the number of grocery bags they can put on a Lyft van to grocery delivery. So it is cut down on those trips, and yet still providing the service that that rider needs to have. And that has brought great efficiencies and saved a significant amount of funding for TriMet. So as we look at these opportunities, how are we delivering service to our riders, meeting their needs? Is there a more efficient way, a more effective way to do that? So that's just another example. It's not just about cutting costs, but let's do it smarter.
And just one, go ahead, time. Just one quick follow-up, because I know you're having to invest a lot in personnel and security and those. Are you finding a way to sort of manage that? Because I know you probably have pressure to increase operating costs for very important and specific reasons. Are you looking at that balancing act and trying to make some decisions around that?
Yes, we are. Security on our system is extremely important so that folks feel safe and that they want to get back on the system. And it's the security efforts that we've had, we've increased our personnel there for very good reasons, over this last year, and we'll continue to have that presence on our system. As we look at the staffing going forward, everything will be added or reduced with a very conscious and deliberate effort. So did that answer all of your question?
Yeah, I think you have I'm just implying we
a
have a dilemma,
balancing.
because you have all of
It is a balancing.
these staffing needs, and some of them they're all critical, so something I'm sure you're thinking about.
Yeah.
I could also jump in, Nancy, just one of the things that's critical on the law enforcement side is through the pandemic, the training courses were closed down, and we were budgeted for 68 law enforcement personnel. We've not reached that threshold right now. We're down into 20 law enforcement. So that funding that was there, we were able to shift that and be able to use it to increase, to bounce to what you were saying on that.
Thank you.
I have the next question. We understand that TriMet continues to work towards a goal of achieving 100% zero-emission buses by 2040. This goal will require purchase of new buses as well as maintenance facility improvements to serve the new vehicles. Can you just give us an update? Are you on track to meet that goal? What potential obstacles do you foresee? We've heard lots about the technological challenges associated with capital improvements. So just give us an update on where we're at.
Yes, good morning. And again, I'm Claire Corey. I'm the new Chief of Strategy and Planning Officer. I've been with the organization about 4 or 5 months now. And I can tell you this is something that we've spent a good amount of time talking about since I arrived. TriMet remains firmly committed to achieving our goal of 100% zero emissions fleet. But as you can imagine, with any new emerging technology or any change comes a lot of learning and a lot of adapting. And I would say that's where we are right now. I also want to make sure to share with you, TriMet has a rich history here. When we set our goal back in 2019, we started that conversion. So we're at a point right now where within our fleet, we have 34 battery electric buses. We also immediately took steps right thereafter to dramatically reduce greenhouse emissions, and our biggest reduction then came from switching to renewable diesel, 99% renewable diesel. With that switch, and then also switching to 100% renewable electricity back in 21 and 22, we have achieved our first benchmark that we set. But it's also, as you can imagine, a multi-phase transition plan, so over years. But it's estimated that we have cut our emissions produced by the agency by nearly 70%, which is big, and something that should be celebrated by the agency. Like many across our industry, our initial experience, as you can imagine, has been mixed, and we are facing a range of challenges as we work toward the full fleet conversion. Those are particularly around vehicle performance, reliability, and cost. These include the need for continued technology advancements to meet transit operations demands, ongoing supply chain issues that we hear a lot about these days in the news, the scale, the cost of facility improvements, and then our regional hydrogen supply that would be required to support a zero-emissions fleet. And then, of course, as you can imagine, continued coordination with regional, local, state partners is absolutely necessary. Recognizing all of this, recognizing the challenges, we are currently reevaluating and assessing our approach. We're looking at a lot of data. We've got the team continuously looking at data at the fleet that we have, which is showing that right now, BEBs are not a one-for-one replacement. That's also due because of limitations in range and reliability. The prices have also risen pretty dramatically. In between 2023 and 2024, we've seen a 34% rise in costs in vehicles. The technology does continue to evolve, which is wonderful and what we expect, but there are only currently 2 manufacturers that are Buy America compliant, and that limits competition and flexibility. We're also looking at lessons learned from across the transit industry, how we can best ensure that we're investing in vehicles and infrastructure that deliver on performance and reliability, and then obviously provide long-term value for our passengers and for the region. We currently plan to continue using those renewable diesel buses that I talked about in our existing fleet when we are retiring older buses. And then with our current service projections and fleet projection needs, we don't expect that we'll have to buy vehicles in the next handful of years. Please know we are not resting with our goal towards a sustainable future, and while the path and what we've experienced maybe wasn't linear, maybe wasn't at the pace that we had expected, we do remain firmly committed to reducing our environmental impact and taking the necessary steps today to ensure that zero emissions future.
Just a quick, maybe not quick follow-up.
Yeah.
How reliant is this project, this initiative on federal funding in order to complete the transition, and what impacts are you expecting to see or are concerned about based on the current administration's policies, and would you want to fund this goal a different way?
Yeah, that's a loaded question and a really good question. I really appreciate it. So, clearly our existing resources are simply not enough funds to transition to a full zero-emission fleet. We will be heavily reliant on external resources and partners, specifically federal funding. So if that federal funding does not come through, simply stated, we would not be able to transition to a fully zero-emission fleet within the immediate, near future, much less be able to invest in expansion projects. So as you know, the federal funding and the support from the federal government is extremely important, not just to TriMet, but to other transit entities as well. I'd love to fund it another way if we could, and again, as I shared earlier, we're looking at opportunities for different funding sources. It's a sensitive time out there to talk about increases in anything, and so we're walking very carefully, working with our partners and working with the legislature at this time.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Just read, so we all saw this week that Port of Portland PDX revoked its DEI policies in order to ensure federal funding. And I imagine TriMet is under the same pressures, and just wanted to see if that's the case and what maybe their strategy is around that.
We have are reviewing, we're taking the necessary steps to look at this, and we'll be rolling something out here in the next month or two.
We see increased or continued spending in this budget for safety and security, an area for which you've increased investments in recent years. What improvements to safety and vandalism rates have you seen since you started investing additional funds to address these issues?
Good morning, Commission. My name is Pat Williams. Good morning, everybody. My name is Pat Williams. I'm the Director of Security and Emergency Management for TriMet. I'm filling in for our Executive Director, Andrew Wilson, who has been very instrumental in some of the things I'm going to be talking about. And I would also like to recognize the general manager and the executive team for all the support they've given us to help increase security across the system. TriMet continues to budget funds for additional staff, new technology, and innovation to help increase our security and safety system-wide, and also to reduce crime. As stated before, we have a reduction in law enforcement, so we're trying to fill a lot of these gaps. We now have some 500 safety and security staff across our system, which is monumental for us, and it's an increase of over 100 staff members since last year. So that's helped improve our presence using multifaceted teams. So these teams enforce our rules of riding, the TriMet code. Our contracted security are the eyes and ears on the system to help keep our riders and our staff safe. And our safety response team, which is an outreach team you will see across the system, they provide social service referrals to people who are on and off our system, near the system, that have a tendency to camp out. We've also launched a security operations center in the last August, which is a 24/7 security dispatch system, and it allows us to monitor cameras and dispatch security to events. We've improved our access control to our elevators, and we're looking at projects for access control on some of our platforms, as well as monumental increases to our CC cameras, lighting, and fencing projects, and as well as swiftly cleaning and removing unauthorized campers from our property. I'm happy to say that our calls for police service have dropped from year to year since 2021, and since that time have actually reduced by 50%. In 2023 through 2024, our physical assaults and attempted assaults on transit employees have dropped from 205 down to 119, which is a 42% reduction. So one of the things I'd like to talk about as well, which is somewhat confusing, which is vandalism and graffiti. So if you're in the bus mall downtown, for example, the transit mall, our authority to actually enforce is really very limited, right under our vestibules and the tactile strips right in front of where the trains load. So that's a very difficult situation for us to receive reports. We have systems in place to clean, and so we don't always get reports of vandalism or graffiti right away because the systems we have in place are already cleaning it off, or another responsible person jumps on it before us. So that's one of our challenges, to actually track what we are spending.
What metrics are you using to track safety improvements for both riders and drivers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and this one I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the legislation that we've been very monumental. You may have seen our Executive Director, Andrew Wilson, who's been testifying at the legislature as well, and very impactful on these laws. So last year, TriMet was heavily involved in getting changes to the public drug laws. So under House Bill 4002, individuals stopped by law enforcement who are eligible for deflection services, but so they're eligible for deflection services, but they have not been engaged in any other crime or failed deflection within the last 30 days, are eligible for that. This applies to all public safe spaces, including our buses, trains, MAX stations, our stops, and our transit centers. Now, a different law, Senate Bill 1553, is very specific to public transportation. And that particular law we worked very hard in, and that directly addresses public transportation vehicles if somebody's using on the vehicle. And people who are caught using on the vehicles, they're eligible for up to 364 days in jail and a $6,250 fine, or both. The crime that they would be charged with is interfering with public transportation. And our DA's office has been very instrumental in asking for that opportunity. So what we've seen from 2023 through the end of 2024 is a dramatic reduction of possible drug and smoke reports on our vehicles, specific to that crime alone.
And how are you measuring public perception of safety on TriMet?
Another very, very good question. This really drills down to our perception of crime and fear and people's individual safety. We've received very positive feedback with not only the security staff that people see on our system and our platforms and transit centers. We've also increased the monitors on the buses where people can actually see themselves on video so they know that they're being recorded, just like when you walk into a grocery store. They've also seen a timely response in their calls to us, which can either be a text message or a direct call or a social media request to our Security Operations Center, who in turn dispatches. The Security Operations Center has always also been very instrumental in jumping in front of problems before they're even reported. For example, monitoring elevators. So they will see a problem and they will dispatch security before it even gets reported. So our customers are seeing that, our staff is seeing that. We've installed operator safety panels. That's helped our operators feel safe. And we've increased our CCTV capabilities. So this has been really, really important for our law enforcement and our prosecutors in holding individuals accountable. So when a bus pulls into a yard, it's scheduled for a download, so it automatically gets to our CCTV unit and we can ship it off to the prosecutor or the investigator. That's been very, very good. All the digital technology that's involved in that. And as well as we're doing a much better job at tracking our chronic offenders who can be excluded from the system. And a chronic offender would be somebody who's committing a violation with 3 violations in a 90-day period. In 2024, we had an attitude and awareness survey that showed TriMet's ongoing focus to safety, security, and cleanliness, and it's making a difference with our customers and our staff. The survey found that 73%, or nearly 3 out of 4 people, either strongly or somewhat approve in the job that we're doing. And that's 5% higher than it was in 2023. So that's very positive for us. The other one that's important to recognize is our surveys consistently show that riders' perception on the transit system is much higher than those who do not ride, based on what they've heard. So again, reflected in 2024, nearly 8 out of 10 riders, which is 77%, approve of the job that we're doing, and only 44% of non-riders shared that positive opinion. However, that's still a 6% increase over the last year. So I think people are starting to recognize what we're doing and very much appreciate that.
Do you have a strategy for addressing concerns of non-riders?
That's a really, really good question, too. What we are doing is really trying to expose ourselves to as much of the public as possible. Speaking at public events and any way we can socialize what we are doing. One of the other things we're doing is we have a lot of contracted staff, so we're doing as much as we can to train them. What is TriMet's vision and our expectations? So when they do have interaction with non-riders and riders alone, they are able to help provide that education that we can't provide to everybody.
More field trips. I took 30 second graders on a bus. It's good. They take it home. They're like, we rode the bus today, Mom and Dad.
Glad to hear that you did that.
Yeah, it's a treat. It's an experience. I'd recommend it for anyone.
TSCC has been having ongoing conversations about TriMet service adjustments, which began in response to evolving ridership patterns and customer needs during and after the pandemic. Could you please provide an overview of recent service changes and what feedback have you been receiving from the public about these changes?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. I'm Alan Lato. I'm the Senior Director of Planning, and I ride lines 12 and 19. We have increased frequency on a number of different bus lines, and we've introduced a few new lines as well in adjusting to kind of the new pattern of demand in the region. We've upgraded 4 bus lines to frequent service, which is bus lines that run every 15 minutes, 7 days a week, so you can really rely on it and barely even have to check a schedule. That includes the 17 Holgate, and in June, we will be upgrading the Airport Way 181st line in East County. We've implemented new bus lines, including a connection to Swan Island and a new bus line on 148th, which will be coming. And upgraded service frequency on a number of different lines. and done some route changes as well, such as on line 25, extending out farther out Gleason and Troutdale Road to connect to Reynolds High School and Mount Hood Community College, as well as an extension to connect to the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park as well. We've done some reduced service in places where there was either duplicative service or the ridership was really low. And we've also proposed a few things that we ended up putting on hold, such as change to the line 17 and a change to the line 96. And then this is already mentioned, but I want to emphasize, the red line extension doubled the frequency throughout the day, 7 days a week on the west side, west of Beaverton Transit Center, and it improved our service on the east side, our reliability of service. So we've seen ridership growth on lines where we've improved frequency. We've seen ridership growth across the system over the last few years, but we've definitely seen even more ridership growth on those lines where we increase frequency. And we've received a lot of positive feedback for that, for new service, for new frequency, as well as, the detailed questions and comments about individual route changes, some of which lead to us to change our plans.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up along those lines, you mentioned, or before the survey was mentioned in terms of, getting a sense of feedback from the public. And so I'm wondering, in that survey and from what you've talked about, do you have a sense of what people are saying about ridership trends, whether it's positive or negative, and kind of what impacts their, is it perception of safety, like you said, frequency of routes, or other things that might contribute to that?
Yeah, there are a number of different factors that contribute to whether an individual chooses to ride on a given day or not. A few of the big ones are, as I mentioned already, frequency is a huge one. If the bus is coming every 15 minutes, it's a really convenient choice. We know that most of the highest ridership lines in our system are frequent service lines, so they're running every 15 minutes. And doing that consistently attracts more riders. You already heard from Pat about some of our attitude and awareness survey information, and the view of safety and security on board and the convenience of the service has improved over the past 2 years, which is great to see. And we've seen ridership return related to that, but also related to things like special events that went away during the pandemic have come back. And, classic ideas, Rose Festival or Cinco de Mayo or something downtown, but many jurisdictions have these kinds of events, and we can see the tick up in ridership as those start to come back and get more robust. And then almost obviously the return to the office kinds of policies by employers across the region. One of the things, and we definitely have seen a return in ridership to office areas throughout the region, especially in downtown, but throughout. One of the things that we have seen, though, is often those are return to the office, but return to the office 3 days a week. And so it's important to emphasize that, if you were a commuter to an office job, or basically anywhere, 5 days a week, that was 10 boardings a week that you were doing before the pandemic. Now, it might only be 2 or 3 days a week, which is 4 or 6 boardings a week. The number has dropped 40, maybe even 60%, but the value to the individual, being able to keep that job, being able to support their family, being able to pursue whatever dreams they have, is the same. So we're trying to understand not only ridership, but also what are the other values that we're bringing to our customers. I think it's also worth noting that the Central Business District in Portland especially has seen very high vacancy rates. We're obviously seeing people return, but we are hopeful that as the city of Portland continues to work on efforts to make downtown more attractive, that we see more of that return. So a number of different factors that go into individual decisions across the region, but we're seeing fairly positive trends in a number of places.
We've talked a lot about your goal to hit 120 million boardings by 2030, and I'm curious with this revisiting of value versus maybe quantity, quality, quantity, these types of things. If there is conversation around revising that number, or we know, I think we mentioned still 30% off pre-pandemic levels. What's the plan around hitting these goals?
I'll take that, and Claire, our strategy and planning person is up at the table. So if you think about 2021, 22, 23, we're all navigating COVID, and TriMet was in the middle of this ocean. So we got excited at the moment, and we created this ambitious goal of 120 million people riding. So if you think about what occurred after the pandemic, and as we were pulling things, there were growth projections and kind of a deeper ridership analysis that we looked at. So we had to reflect, reset, and then restart. So what we did is we started at the beginning of this year, kind of moving forward, looking over that, recalibrating, looking over the strategy planning process, making sure that it's more realistic and sustainable as we move forward. And this is really including developing a ridership target, which we're going to come back and have that. That's both aspirational and also achievable as we move forward. And one that the entire organization plus the region to actually get around when we move forward. But just rather than that one number that we've been talking about, we're going to really create ridership growth to customer service improvements. We're going to look at our community partnerships that are out there and a broader vision of success as we move forward. And we're really excited about the opportunity. We've started our process in January this year. We'll be meeting with our board to give our board an overview in August, September timeframe. And then we're going to roll out and we're going to get the community and the public involved with it.
Don't worry, we'll follow up. Do you have any other follow-up?
So the elephant in the room is potential recession. Do you have any thoughts on what that potential might be, what kind of impact it might have on ridership and?
I'm gonna let Nancy jump in on the likelihood of a recession. There is always the possibility of ups and downs, and we have kind of feathered our expectation of growth. It's less looking forward than we were, 2 years ago. But we're trying to do what we can to, with the resources available, match to the demand that we see out there and the opportunity that we see out there. So, I don't want to speak to the likelihood of a recession. I just know that as a planner here for almost 26 years now, we've seen ups and downs, and we expect ups and downs.
And just to maybe say that, but economic recessions do correlate with drops in ridership.
Yes, and it is not always obvious how much of that is a drop in raw demand versus the fact that a recession forces us to reduce ridership. It forces us to reduce service, which reduces ridership. Transit is an interesting product in the sense that the more we supply, the higher the demand goes. Unlike many other kind of classic economic goods, when we provide more frequent service, there are more people who want to ride.
But payroll taxes fall, and so it cuts into your budget.
Exactly.
Service. Yeah.
So we have a couple of minutes, and we had one other question that's not on our list, but I think we have a couple minutes to ask this, and we wanted to ask about how your recruitment activities are going. I know it's been TriMet is not unique to this at all, and you are offering incentives and other kinds of programs to bring qualified drivers and other staff on board. Can you just give us a brief update on that, please? Thank you.
I certainly can. Our recruitment is fantastic right now. We're fully staffed at the frontline level with our operators in both bus and rail, and in most of our maintenance frontline staff, including a lot of the skilled maintenance workers. So we're in a really good position. and able to then respond to what the agency needs with respect to service expansion.
What do you think changed in the labor market that allowed you to get to this point?
Well, it was with a lot of work and effort of our fantastic TriMet staff. So our recruiting efforts were phenomenal. We had hiring events. We included the operator hiring bonus. That includes also a maintenance bonus that we just initiated. A lot of extra focus on engagement, retention. We've included some revisions to our training program, which has resulted in both a more effective and efficient onboarding process and given an additional 40 hours of seat time for our training staff. So all of these efforts that we've done to focus on both hiring our folks but also supporting them once they're here has really resulted in fantastic numbers. We've also improved our retention. We're back to what we were at 2021, and even before that, we had our peak of attrition in 2023. So all looking good in that regard. Yes.
Well, that ends our questions, and I just want to say thank you to all of you. We really appreciate TriMet's deep bench. There is so much expertise and history and knowledge in this room, and we just appreciate you sharing all of that with us, but also with the general public. I think knowing where the tax dollars come from and how they're spent, and then also especially in this time of uncertainty on so many levels, it's much appreciated that everybody shows up and says it like it is. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I will officially close the hearing and then open a regular business meeting of the TSCC. Commissioners, do you have any additional comments on TriMet's budget? No? Great. Allegra, will you please share the recommendations for the certification letter?
Yes, I would be happy to. And first, I would like to say just what an absolute pleasure it has been to work with the finance and budget team here at TriMet. It's true every year. I say it every year, but I just really want to emphasize that because we have a partnership throughout the year. For us, it's not just this day from a staff perspective. So thank you to them for all of their hard work and just putting together an excellent, excellent budget document. So we as staff found the budget estimates to be reasonable for the purposes stated and in substantial compliance with budget law. We have no recommendations or objections we're suggesting.
May I have a motion authorizing the commission to sign the certification letter as recommended by staff?
I will move.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The TriMet budget is so certified by TSCC. Again, we appreciate everyone's joining us this morning for our first hearing of the budget season. We wish you the best of luck with the rest of your budget season. And we're done. Thank you.